I want you to do something. Not right now, but the next time you stand up and walk across a room, I want you to notice how long it takes. Because in 2019, the Journal of the American Medical Association published a study that followed 34,000 adults for 12 years. And what they found was this: walking speed is the single most accurate biological predictor of how long you will live. More accurate than blood pressure, more accurate than cholesterol. Every tenth of a meter per second decrease in gait speed was associated with a 12% increase in all-cause mortality risk. I'm Dr. Laura Candy, and here is what that study also found. The primary driver of gait speed decline after 60 is not general aging. It is leucine deficiency, a specific amino acid that most adults over 60 are not getting enough of at each meal. Today I'm showing you the 5 foods that correct this. I am Dr. Laura Candy, physician, public health researcher, and for 15 years of clinical practice, I have been tracking the nutritional science of muscle aging in adults over 60. 15 years of clinical practice showed me that walking speed is the single most underused clinical marker in senior health. Every other marker your doctor tracks, blood pressure, cholesterol, fasting glucose, all of them require a lab or a cuff. Walking speed requires a hallway, and the JAMA data is unambiguous. Harvard researchers studying anabolic resistance in older adults confirmed what that JAMA trial pointed toward. The primary nutritional explanation for gait speed decline is not caloric intake, it is not total protein intake. It is the per-meal leucine dose reaching the muscle protein synthesis trigger threshold. Most adults over 60 are eating adequate protein across the day. They are failing to concentrate enough leucine at any single meal to activate the synthesis machinery the muscle needs to maintain its mass and function. Your doctor has not mentioned leucine at a routine appointment. Not because it is not real, because measuring leucine intake requires a dietary analysis that a 15-minute appointment does not allow for. Today that changes. Think of it this way: muscle protein synthesis, the process that rebuilds and maintains your leg muscles after every step you take, does not run continuously. It is triggered. The trigger is leucine, specifically a blood leucine concentration that exceeds a threshold. In a young adult, reaching that threshold requires approximately 2 to 2.5 grams of leucine per meal. Clinical studies showed that in adults over 60, that threshold rises significantly due to anabolic resistance. The muscle becomes less sensitive to leucine signals. It requires more of the trigger to produce the same response. And when you do not reach the threshold, even if you consume protein, the synthesis machinery does not fully activate. The repair work does not happen at the rate your muscles need. And here is the clinical reality that most people never hear from their physician. Muscle lost from inadequate leucine signaling is not cosmetic. Every fraction of a percent of muscle lost from the quadriceps and gastrocnemius, the primary muscles driving gait, translates directly into the gait speed number that JAMA used to predict lifespan. The threshold is not theoretical. The consequence is measured in seconds per meter and then tracked over 12 years. And at the end of this video, I am going to reveal a food that most physicians in the last 20 years told their senior patients to avoid or reduce. A food that Tufts University researchers in 2020 found produced measurably better gait speed outcomes in older adults compared to the version most people switched to because they thought it was healthier. The clinical data was specific enough to shift the nutrition recommendation. Stay until the end. If you are watching this and you are over 60, pay attention to what I am about to tell you. The first food is eggs, and I want to give you the leucine number specifically because the specificity is what makes this actionable. One large egg contains approximately 540 milligrams of leucine. 2 eggs deliver just over 1 gram of leucine. That is not enough to reach the threshold on its own. But eggs are on this list for a reason that goes beyond the leucine count. Bioavailability. Clinical studies showed that egg protein has the highest digestibility-corrected amino acid score of any whole food protein. The leucine in eggs reaches the bloodstream faster and more completely than the leucine in almost any other food source. For a muscle protein synthesis system that is already operating at reduced sensitivity, the speed of amino acid delivery matters. A slower absorbing protein source might not produce the required blood leucine peak even if it contains sufficient leucine on paper. This was confirmed by research from the University of Texas Medical Branch examining postprandial leucine kinetics in older adults. Egg protein produced a faster and higher blood leucine peak compared to plant protein sources with equivalent leucine content. The peak is what triggers the threshold. The peak is what matters. Think of it this way. The leucine threshold is like a fire alarm trigger. The alarm only activates when the smoke concentration passes a specific level. It does not matter if you slowly fill the room with smoke over 2 hours. The alarm needs a fast, concentrated peak. Eggs produce that peak more reliably than almost any other protein source. 2 eggs daily, scrambled or poached, with the largest protein-containing meal of the day. Not alone, with other protein, the combination produces a sustained leucine availability that extends the synthesis window beyond what eggs alone achieve. The second food is Turkish yogurt, and the mechanism here is distinct from eggs, which is why both belong on the list. Turkish yogurt contains two types of protein in the same food, whey and casein. Whey protein is a fast-digesting fraction that produces a rapid blood leucine spike. Casein is a slow-digesting fraction that produces a prolonged, sustained amino acid release, lasting 4 to 6 hours. The combination of fast and slow protein in a single food source produces something that neither alone achieves, a leucine response that spikes rapidly, crosses the synthesis threshold, and then sustains itself long enough for the repair and building process to continue beyond the initial activation window. Think of it this way. Whey is the ignition. Casein is the fuel. The ignition gets the engine running. The fuel keeps it running. When you eat Turkish yogurt, you are providing both in a single meal, without any coordination required. Clinical studies showed that dual-phase protein feeding in older adults produces significantly greater net muscle protein synthesis compared to equivalent protein delivered in a single-phase form. This was documented in Maastricht University's work on protein distribution and synthesis efficiency in adults over 60. 150 to 200 grams of full-fat Turkish yogurt daily as a separate eating occasion from the egg meal. Not as a snack skipped between meals, as a dedicated protein delivery event. Now, those two foods address the leucine delivery side of the problem. Fast bioavailability from eggs, sustained release from Turkish yogurt. That covers the trigger and the maintenance. But here is where the mechanism becomes more complete, because leucine availability alone does not fully determine how much muscle protein synthesis actually occurs. There is a second factor that most people never encounter in the context of walking speed, and it is the reason why some adults see minimal response to increased protein intake. The cell membrane. Your muscle cells receive insulin signals that facilitate amino acid uptake into the cell. When the muscle cell membrane lacks sufficient omega-3 fatty acids in its phospholipid structure, the insulin receptor on that membrane becomes less responsive. Less insulin sensitivity in the muscle membrane means the amino acids, including the leucine you just consumed from eggs and yogurt, encounter a membrane that is less efficient at absorbing them. The third food addresses this second mechanism. The third food is salmon. The EPA and DHA omega-3 fatty acids in salmon are incorporated directly into muscle cell membrane phospholipids when consumed consistently over weeks, as they replace the saturated fatty acids that dominate in a typical Western dietary pattern. The membrane fluidity increases. A more fluid membrane is a more insulin-sensitive membrane. A more insulin-sensitive membrane absorbs amino acids more efficiently. This was confirmed by research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in a study examining omega-3 supplementation and muscle protein synthesis rates in older adults. The omega-3 group showed significantly higher fractional synthetic rates, the rate at which new muscle protein is being built, compared to controls with equivalent protein intake. Think of it this way. The leucine is the building material. The insulin signal is the delivery truck. The cell membrane is the loading dock. If the loading dock is poorly maintained, the delivery truck arrives and waits. Omega-3 from salmon maintains the loading dock. 2 servings of wild salmon per week at a minimum. 150 grams per serving, not farmed salmon if possible, because the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio in farmed salmon is significantly less favorable. The EPA and DHA concentration per gram is substantially lower in farmed compared to wild-caught. The fourth food is Brazil nuts, and this is the food on the list that most people would not connect to walking speed at any stage of this explanation. Skeletal muscle contains a group of proteins called selenoproteins. These proteins use selenium as a required component of their structure. They protect the contractile proteins inside the muscle fiber, the proteins that actually produce the force that moves your leg, from oxidative damage during use. Every step you take generates oxidative stress inside the muscle. The selenoproteins are the damage control system. Clinical studies showed that selenium insufficiency in older adults is associated with measurably reduced muscle strength and functional mobility. When the selenoprotein system is operating below capacity because dietary selenium is inadequate, the contractile proteins degrade faster than they can be replaced, even when leucine delivery and insulin sensitivity are optimal. Think of it this way. You can have perfect leucine delivery and perfect cell membrane fluidity, but if the contractile proteins inside the fiber are being degraded by oxidative damage faster than they are being built, the net result is still muscle loss. Brazil nuts are the protection layer. They ensure that what gets built stays built. 1 to 2 Brazil nuts daily, not more. Brazil nuts contain extremely high selenium concentration, and excess selenium above the tolerable upper limit produces toxicity. One nut delivers close to the full daily selenium requirement for most adults. 2 nuts is the upper practical range. 1 is sufficient. If you are watching this and you are over 60 and you have noticed your walking pace has slowed, pay attention to what comes next, because everything I have described so far is the foundation of the protocol: leucine delivery, sustained protein synthesis, cell membrane fluidity, contractile protein protection, 4 separate nutritional layers, each targeting a distinct point in the muscle maintenance chain. But the 5th food is the one I promised at the beginning, and it is the food that 15 years of clinical practice showed me most of my patients had already removed from their diet based on advice that, for this specific application in adults over 60, the Tufts University 2020 data directly challenged: the food that was taken away, and that the research now says should be put back. Before the final reveal, check that you are subscribed. Every video this week covers a different leg warning signal. Tomorrow covers a symptom that most people have been told is normal and unavoidable. Do not miss it. The 5th food is whole milk, not skim milk, not low-fat milk, whole milk. And I need to give you the Tufts University data precisely, because the specificity is what makes this clinically meaningful. Tufts University's 2020 prospective cohort study examining dairy fat intake and physical function in adults over 60 found that higher whole-fat dairy consumption was associated with significantly better gait speed outcomes over a 3-year follow-up period compared to low-fat and skim dairy consumption. The association was independent of total calorie intake and total protein intake. It was specific to dairy fat. The mechanism involves 3 simultaneous contributions that skim milk cannot replicate. First, the fat matrix in whole milk significantly increases the bioavailability of the fat-soluble vitamins D3 and K2 that are naturally present in whole milk, but largely absent in skim. D3 is required for muscle protein synthesis regulation at the cellular level. K2 is required for the activation of osteocalcin, which stimulates muscle fiber glucose uptake during exercise. Second, the fat itself slows gastric emptying, which extends the window of amino acid absorption from the whey and casein, improving the sustained release profile I described with Turkish yogurt. Third, the natural butyrate in whole milk fat has been shown in emerging research to reduce the intestinal inflammation that blunts amino acid absorption in older adults. Think of it this way. Skim milk is whole milk with the delivery mechanism removed. The amino acids are there. The vitamins that make them work at the cellular level are not. And here is the part that 15 years of clinical practice told me most patients never hear. The advice to switch senior adults to skim milk was based on cardiovascular concerns derived from research populations that were not 65 years old with declining gait speed. The Tufts data examined the population that actually matters here. The conclusion was not ambiguous, and before I give you the complete protocol, the issue is not which individual food is best. The issue is the gap between what you consume at each meal and the leucine threshold your muscle requires. These 5 foods, combined and timed correctly, close that gap consistently across the day. Any one of them alone produces partial results. Together they work on every layer of the problem simultaneously, and the most important part is this. Here is the complete protocol. Consistent with Mayo Clinic's nutritional guidelines for muscle mass preservation in adults over 60. With breakfast, 2 eggs, cooked in any form, combined with 150 grams of Turkish yogurt. This produces the fast leucine spike from the eggs, followed by the sustained casein release from the yogurt. The combination at the same meal is not optional. They work together. With any meal twice per week, 150 grams of wild salmon, with a fat-containing side dish to maximize omega-3 absorption into cell membrane phospholipids daily, 1 to 2 Brazil nuts, with any meal at any time. Consistency over the weeks matters more than timing, with the largest meal of the day, 200 milliliters of whole milk, consumed with the food, not separately. The fat matrix slows gastric transit and extends amino acid absorption from whatever protein accompanies it. The protocol requires minimum 8 weeks before gait speed improvements are measurable. Muscle cell membrane composition changes take 4 to 6 weeks. The leucine threshold response improves over the same window. Do not assess before 8 weeks. The red line is alcohol. Clinical studies showed that a single evening of alcohol consumption suppresses muscle protein synthesis for up to 24 hours by directly inhibiting the mTOR pathway that leucine activates. One night of alcohol effectively cancels the leucine work from that entire day. Alcohol consumed multiple evenings per week makes this protocol significantly less effective, regardless of how precisely the food protocol is followed. If this is the first time anyone has connected your walking speed to a specific amino acid mechanism with a measurable solution, subscribe. I publish research-backed breakdowns like this every day this week. Drop your age in the comments below. I read every single one. Tomorrow's video covers a symptom that most adults over 60 experience and most physicians have stopped investigating. Your legs shake when you stand, not from weakness, not from balance, from a specific neuromuscular signal that most doctors never explain to their patients. The Journal of Neurophysiology published the mechanism. Tomorrow, I will show you the 5 foods that rebuild the nerve-muscle connection behind it. Tomorrow, do not miss it.